Hey everyone, I am back for our Thursday mini training course. I hope you guys liked it last week. It was like the first time in a long time I've done a live video. I think it's been like 6 years or something. So bear with me, and I just want to say thank you for your patience. I will keep it super real on here. So I have like a little outline I follow, but literally it's just like me going at the top of my head. So I really appreciate your grace if it's not like picture perfect. It's literally from my iPhone. But I do like to hear if you join me live, like leave a comment below, either live or replay if you're catching the replay in this group. And then last week, once I realized I posted it to the Facebook group, I was like, wow, this is like super simple. At least it's easy to digest. Hopefully that's how I want to keep it. And it just seems silly to only offer it to the small group that we have in the Facebook group, which I absolutely love, but I also want to give that content to more people if I can and help as many people as I can. So after I post the live video, I have decided to upload it to YouTube as a video for people to replay there. So if you're doing that via the YouTube replay, I'd love for you to leave a comment in the YouTube comments, just so I can get a feel for who's watching it where. Like I said, it was kind of a last minute decision last week, and I kind of just took it and ran with it. I had to make like a whole YouTube channel and all that, but I was like, let's just do it so that I can keep trying to share the goods for you guys, because whatever method works best for you, I want to be able to do that. So long story short, we're going to talk about today 3 ways to help you shift your mindset. And I don't think there's like a one, end all be all way you have to think about your nutrition or your fitness or your wellness journey. But I just kind of have like 3 tips to hopefully get you on the right path and some ways to think about it, and hopefully give you either a new perspective or teach you something new today. And the 3 tips I have, I think it would make sense to do it in the order that I go over them, but no worries if not. I think if you're just chipping away at each one, you're light years ahead of the game. So let's talk about the first one. It might sound a little cliche. It's super easy for some if they've had one before, and you've probably definitely heard it before, but we want to think about establishing your why, right? So this is something I often recommend making bigger than yourself, right? Like if you're a parent of 3, maybe your why looks like, being able to be around with your kids when they're older and having kids, and be able to do active things with them and not feel like you have to hold back because of health reasons or physical limitations or anything like that. So sometimes doing it for something bigger than yourself can be super helpful. I also understand people have certain faiths, and that really helps them stay accountable and in line with their core values and whatever that looks like for you. But I think some things to think about is that it needs to have a strong enough purpose to help you. I don't know if resist temptation is the right word, but I tend to find people get very clear about their decision making once they understand what their why is. So what I mean by that is it's a lot easier to say no to things once you know what your why is. And we'll get more into that into tip number 2. But something else to think about with your why is that you're a person that goes through many seasons in life, so it can change, and it's probably going to. Like your why when you were 21 is probably a lot different than when you're 35 or 41, right? So I think that's important to remember, and it's not a bad thing, because hopefully you're evolving as a human too, so that why is going to change. And I think it's important to give yourself that grace to allow the change to happen, but also not so much grace that you're not seeing the why through too, right? So if you're someone who's changing the why up every 2 weeks, it's like, okay, you're not like crystal clear, or it's not, if it's really easy for you to cave into those temptations or do things that don't go along with your why, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's big enough for you, and it might be just time to reevaluate that. So I think it's important to note that it can change. It's just not having it change too often is probably a good idea, and like seeing the why through and realizing like that is just not as important to me as it once was, and I'm gonna change it to this and see how this goes for a decent amount of time and give it a valid shot, right? Okay, so I would actually love to hear from people if you already have your why established. A lot of the people in this group are clients I currently work with or have worked in the past with. And I'd love to hear about what your why is below in the comments, whether it's in the Facebook group or the YouTube channel. Just drop it in the comments for me. Maybe it's to get better at the Open every year, or to manage the upcoming holidays this winter and not feel like you go through this yo-yo cycle between seasons, or whatever that looks like for you. I would love to hear about it. If you're open to sharing, drop that below. And we're gonna, that whole number one tip, establish your why, transitions us really nicely to the second one, which is, now we have the knowledge that we need the why, and the second one is a little bit harder, but it's the application of the why, and it's to align the behaviors with that why. So once you know that, like I said, it's really easy to say no to things that aren't in line with your why. And it makes you feel less guilty about it, because I think sometimes in social situations, there can be a lot of guilt, or in family gatherings, there can be a little bit of remorse if you have to like sacrifice those things and prioritize other things. And all of that is really important to consider about what's appropriate for you with your journey. But I think what I'm getting at here is it empowers you and embraces you to say no to things that don't go along with your why. So once you have that why established, you can literally say no to anything that's not going to help you get closer or be in alignment with that why. And I think that that's like a really good place to be, because it makes that really easy for you in those times that could cause like a challenging conversation, right? And I think it's really important. One thing I love at TTT that we talked about in a camp recently was about the term selfish and how it can have such a negative connotation. But I think we were talking more specifically in turning professional in the sport, not just like becoming a professional athlete, but just becoming professional in the way you do things for your sport. And I think this can apply to any health and fitness journey, right? So if you commit to something and you want to do it really well, I think it is going to like make you have to be a little bit selfish about it. So I think it was just important. I didn't want to go on a huge tangent about that, but I think it's good to hear and give yourself permission often to be selfish about some things. Now, remind you, I do not have any children, so I know, you can look at me and say, what does she know? She doesn't have any kids. How can she know what she's talking about? She doesn't know what it's like to take care of herself and 3 kids. So I'm not here to preach any of that to any of you. I just think that it's hard to pour from an empty cup. Plain and simple, right? So even if it's 2 minutes out of your day or 5 minutes, or maybe you take an hour, whatever that looks like for you, but that's something to chip away at. And again, just bringing it back to being a little bit selfish about keeping your behaviors with your why, even if it sparks uncomfortable conversations to have with people that matter most to you or are super close to you. I think those people will understand the most, which is really nice. So that leads us to our last tip, which is to be intentional with your food vocab. So for those that have worked with me so far, probably know that I am a little bit OCD about this. But I often think if I hear how you speak of food, it paints a pretty good picture for me for how you think about it. So I think if you want to be the change you want to see, it starts with you. So I personally made like this promise to myself when I started coaching that I would challenge myself in conversations to make sure I use phrases that align with what I believe and think about food to help spread that with others. So just know this is going to take a lot of practice, right? So if you have 20 plus something years of saying words like good, bad regarding food, treats, cheats, on and off track, all those fun things. If you're guilty of that, drop me emoji below. Like, I've definitely done that before. But I think if you can be intentional about that, it will go such a long way to the way that you think about food. And I just wanted to dive into some of those terms and express like how it can help you. So starting off with food labels, right? You've often heard or have probably thought certain foods are good or bad, right? Yes, we know that some nutrients may be tied to various health conditions later on in life, right? But the moment that you start restricting food, any food type, specific food, maybe you've heard carbs are the enemy or sugar is the devil or whatever the case may be. But the moment you start doing that, it's like you cause this chemical reaction in your brain once you restrict, that it is going to be followed by a binge episode, whether it's the next day, whether it's 2 hours later, whether it's 2 months later or 2 years. Like, there's no specific timeline for that, but the more you do that, the more that's going to happen. And that causes that yo-yo cycle of dieting that we don't need in our life, that does not promote longevity. So I think if I could give you the biggest bang for your buck, it's gonna like be thinking that no food is good or bad, and just allow yourself to have all the food and not limit yourself in that way, but just think about moderation. Like, at the end of the day, I was just having a call with a client this morning, and we were talking about how complicatedly simple this whole thing is, because it's literally just doing things that make you feel good. But we tend to either make it super hard, we tend to overcomplicate it. Sometimes we have too much access to free information and not all of it is right. Whatever the case may be, but it really comes down to the end of the day, what makes you feel good and what nourishes your body, and allow yourself to have those things in those moderations, right? Another word I hear thrown around often is treats or cheat meals. And this might be a little more tough love, fairly blunt here, but I always say, like, you don't need a treat, you're not your dog. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a certain type of food, but I think the vocab is very strange. Along with cheat, like, you cheating on food doesn't really make sense to me. I would assume you date a significant other and not food. So cheating on it just sounds weird. We keep putting these like ties and emotional bonds with food, and food doesn't have emotions, right? So I can understand why we say that, but I would challenge you to try to remove those from your vocabulary so we can change these thought patterns that we have literally embedded in our brain, right? And then the last one that I often hear even coaches in this space say is being on and off track. Now, I think this may apply more for people that are like phasing their nutrition. And maybe they mean, I got off track from our deficit this week, or I maybe overate in our maintenance phase this week. And that can make more sense to me. But more often than not, I'm hearing I was on track all week, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, I was off track. Now, most of you that sign up with me, you commit to making a true change with yourself. You're investing in me to help you and dedicating the time. So I want you to think about this stuff as like a lifelong journey process and a true lifestyle change, not just like a quick fix. Not even if we're like periodizing your nutrition, it's still not like, we're doing this for 60 days hard and then we're not going to give a shit after. I don't really work that way. And I hope I've never given that idea off to you guys, because I think at the end of the day, no matter what happens, it's all part of your journey. And even if you, overate in your maintenance phase this week, you can always put a protein on your plate. You can always drink one more glass of water before bed, or go for like a digestive walk after dinner. Like, you can always do one thing to help you move the needle before the end of the day. And I think we have to let go of this like picture perfect, need to be 100% every day, because you're going to burn out super quick doing that and it's never going to last. So I think that if you can even move that needle 10%, it's still better than 0. So that was a long tangent about food vocab, but I think it's worth just being mindful of. And I think the more you know, the better decisions you can make. So choose with it what you want. Maybe, you know, starting with like all 4 phrases is a little overwhelming for you. I totally get that. But now when you bring it up, you don't have to correct every person if they say it, but maybe just think about the next time you use it, if you want to use it. You know, that's what I want to get you thinking about today. So these are just to help you have a better mindset. Like I said, there was no one size fits all or one mind frame here to conquer this whole thing. So this is just to get you started. To recap, to help you shift that mindset. Number 1, establish your why. I'd put that somewhere that you could see every day. If you're a Post-it note fan or a reminder or a background on your phone, drop yours in the comment below. I'd love to hear more about it if I don't already know. And maybe some people in the group have similar ones, which would be super cool to link up in that way. The second is to align those behaviors with your why. And that's probably honestly the hardest, but it takes practice just like everything else. And I think it'll make things more crystal clear for you. And then the last one is to be really intentional with your food vocab, because that can help you reframe some of your thought processes regarding food. And that's something I want to help you sustain and create and evolve into over time. So I will post this to the Facebook group. I will upload to YouTube today as well. If you catched it live or replay, I'd love again to hear it in the comments. I will also make a quick helpful graphic as a resource of what we talked about today and the 3 tips to get it done. And I will post that next week, and see you all next Thursday. Thank you so much. Bye.